And tonight we're going to hear from him about early decision and early action. Some deadlines are coming up and they vary. I'm sure that you'll talk a little bit more about that, Mark. But we're really glad that you all are here tonight. And then, if you have a question about those two topics, early decision, early action, or if something else comes up that you've got to ask, we can ask questions after we let Mark have the chance to talk. So with that, take it away, sir.
All right. I hope everyone's having a good evening. Hope everyone who took the ACT today felt like they killed it, and you guys are anxiously awaiting good results. Like Ms. Keys indicated, that there may be questions that are relative to other topics that I've covered in the past, or things that are entirely different that we haven't talked about yet. If that's the case, definitely ask those questions at the end. If you have things about early decision, early action, any of those topics, definitely just take yourself off mute or raise your hand. Ms. Keys will fill those for me because I won't be able to see them once I start presenting, or even put them into the chat if you want. If you're watching this retroactively, I'm getting a lot of phone calls from folks who have questions after they do go watch these recordings. Don't hesitate to do that, okay? I always give my I always give my email, which I'll type out here, Mark@Brains and Brawn. LC.com. But I'm also going to add in my personal cell phone because I've had a lot of phone calls. And if you're like, hey, man, I just opened up the FAFSA and my head's about to explode, just give me a call. I'll help you through it. Okay. So where can I access the recording? Ms. Keys will be your point of contact for that. Let me go ahead and start sharing my screen, and let me know if you have any questions along the way. So today is going to be a lot of familiar territory for most of us. You probably have heard most of these things before. So when we're talking about early decision, early action, a lot of these topics should be, it should not be the first time you've heard it, but if it is, that's okay. Make sure you ask questions. We're not talking about regular decision, which is what you'll typically think of when you think about your college application deadline. So diving into this, what is early action and why should you care? Early action, often called EA if you're looking on an application portal, is a non-binding opportunity for you to apply before the general regular decision deadline. This is going to allow you potentially 2 opportunities to apply. So if you're really going for a reach school, a school that you're not super confident in, the benefits of applying early, whether that be early action, which is what I'm talking about now, or early decision, which is what I'll be talking about in a second, is that you do have the opportunity most of the time to apply twice. Okay, so you can go through the admission process twice, and if you're not super thrilled with your ACT or SAT scores or something like that, or if your grades aren't as high as they could be, go ahead and go ahead and apply if you think you have a chance, and then you can reapply if you need to. These are non-binding acceptances. If you receive an acceptance, you do not have to go to that college. That is extremely important. The main distinction between early action and early decision is that you have an opportunity that you are not held to. So let's talk a little bit about it. Some of the specifics here. You're applying early. So the typical early deadline, and this is a general deadline, is November 1st. Okay, now that varies school to school. So like UNC Chapel Hill, their deadline is October 15th. So it's coming up in 10 days. There are other schools that have deadlines of November 15th or even December 1st. Some schools have early action 1 and early action 2. That will be indicated on their website. The early action 2 is always after the early action 1, typically by anywhere from 2 weeks to a month and a half. You will usually receive your admission decision far earlier than the regular decision. And that'll be anywhere. Honestly, it can even be in mid-December all the way up until February. You have an offer from the school that says, we have accepted you. You do not have to go. Extremely. You can apply to other colleges, basically having a trump card in your back pocket where you can use that if you need to apply to other schools. And that will still hold you to the May 1st national response date deadline, which is the one that you'll see if you're applying regular or early. Early decision, note the big difference here is the word decision is binding. Okay, I know I've covered this before, but I can't stress it enough. If you are accepted on an early decision profile, you do have to go there. You may only apply to one early decision school. Early action that we talked about earlier typically allows you to apply to multiple schools unless it's called single or restrictive early action, which will be extremely clear on their website. Early decision, you may only apply to one early decision school. These are binding. If you are accepted to a school that you apply to on an early decision application cycle, you must go there. The only way you can typically get out of this is pretty intense, is to go through an appeal process where you can prove that you are unable with loans to afford it. Okay. Some other specifics. So typically the similar deadlines here, these are more likely to have 2 cycles. You're going to see a few schools that have early action 1 and early action 2, but tons of schools have early decision 1 and early decision 2. If they say yes, you've already said yes. Your parents have to sign off on an early decision application. So your parents will have to give their e-signature, which is, legal consent to agree to go there. The reason for this is because we'll go into this in a minute. When you get accepted early decision, like I said, you're bound to go there before you really know what it's going to cost you. Okay. We'll talk about why you would ever want to do this in just a second. You can only apply to one college. You can apply to multiple schools on early action. You can only apply to one early decision. If you are accepted early decision and you have regular decision applications out there, you have to go out and contact these colleges that you've applied to on the regular decision and pull back your regular decision application. You must send out a non-refundable deposit, okay? Because remember, you have agreed to go there way before May 1st. You're not getting that money back, even if you can prove that you cannot afford it. I'm going to pause for a second and ask if there are any questions about what I just covered, because that is like the fast and loud version of early decision versus early action. It is extremely nuanced and school specific. So you need to go through reading the fine print of each school. I'll also in a minute go through the merit of each, why you should consider them. And I'll play devil's advocate and give you guys the good and the bad, the pros and cons. But are there questions about what these terminologies mean before we move forward? All right. If not, I'm going to go through the general information a bit more. For early, when we're talking about if you should or should not apply, it is good if you have a ton of research placed into these schools. If you're like, I really know a ton about this particular institution, I'm confident it's a good fit for me. If you think that that's a good match for you in all of the different categories that we've discussed up to this point throughout all of our earlier videos. If you have not seen those videos, please contact Ms. Keys, go watch them retroactively. You should definitely know what I'm talking about there. You should make sure it's a good match for you academically, socially, geographically. I would also add in here financially, if you're at all concerned about anything. If you are above or pretty close to the admission profile for all of the different things they're looking for, SAT, ACT, your AP scores, GPA, class rank, and if your academic record has been consistent, okay? If you have recently had a huge bump in your GPA, I would typically tell students to wait until regular decision, because when you apply through regular decision, most of the time you can show them your fall grades. And I know that even if you're on a year-long trajectory, it may be a little confusing, but if your classes don't change, you can still show them the entire first semester of your senior year. If you had a really rough freshman year and a really rough sophomore year in terms of your grades, and then you turned it all around your junior year, you're going to want to be able to demonstrate that that's still the case and that you didn't just do great during virtual school or the time of COVID, and that you are still doing well in your classes. And that might mean waiting until regular decision. But if your grades have been consistently similar freshman, sophomore, junior, and the first part of senior year, it's not that much of a distinction for you. So early might be a better option for you. One thing I'll add to this that I've talked about extensively before on financing college, if you're applying to a public university, so think your flagship or non-flagship state schools, so anything from, in state would be University of Tennessee at any of the campuses, Martin, Chattanooga, Knoxville, Memphis, anything like that, or any other large powerhouse flagship state schools like Chapel Hill, UVA. If you're applying to a public institution, more often than not, those schools will only have certain scholarships available for early profiles. So if you're wanting to go to an institution and you want to apply for a lot of academic scholarships or other maybe non-merit scholarships that are tied to things like your particular demographic or religious background, if you're applying to a religious institution, a lot of those scholarships are going to have a much higher chance of getting them on the early, and some of them are only eligible for acceptance on early. Okay, so if you are very interested, like if you're trying to go to UNC Chapel Hill and you're trying to get the cost as far down as you can, you're going to want to apply early, just October 15th for that particular institution, not November 1st, because a lot of the scholarships that they will disseminate to the entering class are only eligible on the freshman early profile. They're even higher rates of acceptance at that time too. Okay, that's another important thing to consider. Now let's talk about who shouldn't be applying early. Okay, I just mentioned a few of these things, but if you don't really know a ton about these schools and you're still doing research, don't throw out an application into the wind. Okay, don't spend the money and apply if you're not pretty sure that you'd want to go there, whether that's early action or early decision. If you're trying to just apply early to get it out of the way, that's not the way to do it, right? Spend more time. If you're that kind of mentality, if that's the person that you are, no problem there. But if you're somebody who's like, let's just go ahead and get this over with, take a little more time, have more people read your essays, do as much work as you can, and put the best effort you have into it. If you're not fully committed, if you're not certain about college, absolutely don't apply early decision because you have to go. And don't just do it because your friends are. And especially, like I said, if you have a weird trajectory with your grades, like if you have a much better recent history than freshman and sophomore year, you might want to hold off on this because you would be able to demonstrate a strong start to your senior year too, to demonstrate to these colleges that you would be a good candidate to go there. Now, let's dive in a little more to the benefits here. So it does to absolutely reduce your stress. It also saves time and the expense of submitting a lot of applications. You gain time if you are accepted and you know where you're going to be going to college on December 15th or January or even February. That's way, way, way ahead of a lot of the other kids. You can start figuring stuff out and give you some more time. Also gives you a lot more time to apply to colleges. To apply to scholarships, because most scholarships are going to require that you have a pending or some sort of college acceptance, right? They're not just going to give you a scholarship if you have no plans to go to college typically. So if you have a college acceptance in December versus April, you have 4.5 more months to begin applying to scholarships. And remember, scholarships are limited, okay? And you can reassess your options and apply elsewhere if not accepted. So if you have some schools that are real reaches for you, but you're really interested to go into them, like, I'll give you a perfect example. I really wanted to go to Harvard or Yale when I was in high school, and I did not get accepted to either one early. And I had the opportunity to learn from that and say, okay, maybe my scores are not where they need to be. I studied like crazy and retook the ACT, did quite a bit better, applied regular to Yale and got in, and that's where I went. And that was only because I was able to apply early and realize, hey, my scores are not going to cut it, right? So there is a benefit there, but Yale was early action. So it was a benefit because I got an opportunity to apply it again. But if I'd been accepted, I would not have had to go there. How much leeway are the colleges giving the seniors for whom COVID-induced online 11th grade was seriously challenging? Great question, Michelle. So that is college to college. But in general, I do feel like they are fairly receptive to that. COVID induced a lot of problems within grades and also outside of things that people might necessarily understand. For instance, in the last 5 decades, the lowest ACT scores in the nation were during COVID. So things like that led a lot of schools to say test optionality is the way we're going to go for a few years. If you are in that situation, where you feel that your grades fell off a little bit because of remote learning and because of just the stress that COVID created, that is a situation in which I might say, let's demonstrate that you are able to bounce back quickly with in-person instruction, and let's apply regular after demonstrating strong grades in the first portion of your fall semester of your senior year. If that answered your question, great. If not, feel free to follow up on that. So, and like I said, one of the biggest benefits, in my opinion, especially if you're applying to public institutions, is the opportunity to apply to scholarships that might not be available on the regular profile. Also, this is extremely misleading for a lot of people. I'm going to preface it with the numbers are not perfect here, but for a lot of schools, the acceptance rates are dramatically different for early versus regular. Now, let me devil's advocate that with a little, little evidence to why that might happen. If you're the kind of student who knows that you really want to go to a particular institution and you are so prepared that you're applying early, it's probably a little bit of a, indication that you're also someone who has their scores ready to go, your GPA is strong, and you've really put a lot of effort into it. So you might be a slightly more eligible applicant than people who are applying regular. But that being said, if you're looking at Vanderbilt University, your scores, your acceptance rates are about 300% that of regular decision if you're applying early. If you're looking at Dartmouth in New Hampshire, where I live, 560% higher chances of acceptance. So you're looking at like a 6% acceptance rate on the regular decision profile, but somewhere in the neighborhood of like, for some populations on the earlies, can be misleading, but like almost 30%. It doesn't mean that you as an applicant have that much of an opportunity, but it does mean that the general pool of applicants, 10,000 people, well, let's say 5,000 people apply, about 20 to 30% of those may be accepted early. And then on the regular decision, they may have 25,000 and then they're getting, a sub 5% acceptance rate. So what about Rhodes, Ms. Rainey or Terrell, whichever one is typing that? I don't know those numbers exactly. I would tell you that it's probably a little higher. I don't know I don't have the data on hand. I can get it to you. But in general, the acceptance rate, if we're just looking at it as an acceptance rate, is almost always higher on early, but it doesn't mean that you have a better chance on your profile per se. It just might also be that there's some more competitive applicants applying early. But if it's an early action profile and you really, really, really want to go to that particular institution, that's the situation in which I say, go for it, because at least you might have two opportunities to apply. Okay. The drawbacks of applying early. So I'm sorry, another chat. What do you think about that? Michelle, I'm going to table that question until the end if you don't care, just so that we can stay on track with this, and I'll come right back to it. Okay. Oh, whoops. Let me get this chat out of the way. It's blocking mine. So the drawbacks of applying early. It is pressure. If you're really not sure about something, you might be forced to make a decision earlier than you would want to, especially if you have not made these decisions quite yet. Between now and November 1st is less than a month, so it can be a little daunting. It does have a huge impact on financial aid opportunities for early decision. Financial aid opportunities there I'm talking about. Now, if you have not listened to our breakdown on the financing college, financial aid, need-based, you can't determine if a school offers need-based financial aid. You won't know exactly what they're going to actually charge you and your family until they provide you with an offer letter that says the financial side. If you apply early decision, you risk being in a disadvantageous financial situation. So like, Vanderbilt's, I don't know, 70,000 a year. Let's say you assume that they're going to give you 100% need-based financial aid, but they only give you 40%, and you're out of pocket a substantial amount of money that you can't afford, but you applied early decision. So now you have to go there. That would be the situation in which I'm talking about, where you don't know what they're going to tell you the cost is until you have to pay it. It'd be like going to a used car dealer and telling them you're definitely going to buy the car before you know the price. So early decision is risky there. Early action is not, because early action, they say, all right, it's going to be 50 grand a year. All right, well, I'm going to spend 4 months now trying to get more scholarships. And if I can't do that, then I'll not go there, because you don't have to with early action. You do with early decision. Time crunch for other applications. So this is something I do not like for people to do. If you know that a college that you apply to early decision, you have anywhere below a 90% chance of getting accepted, which is basically everyone in every situation, because colleges typically have acceptance rates below 90%. And you know that there are this long laundry list of other essays that you should be writing for all of your regular decision applications, and you sit on your hands and don't do anything until December 15th, you are going to have 16 days. And keep in mind, for most people, 16 days of which you would typically be spending that time with family between the 15th and the 31st of December, depending on what you do during that time, you're going to be super slammed with all these applications. With my one-on-one clients, I do not let that happen. You, as an individual and as a parent, should not let that happen to yourself. If you know that you have 5 supplemental essays for Chapel Hill and you're applying their regular decision, and you're waiting on Vanderbilt to say if they're going to accept you or not, you should have all of those essays written, because by the time December 16th rolls around, you should be able to just submit all of those things if you need to. All right. Do not sit there twiddling your thumbs, not writing these essays. You can still look and see what these essays are. You can have everything ready to go. Do not fall into this. Okay. The last little thing we sometimes see, which is probably not a big impact for most people, but can happen, is senioritis. If you get into a college December 15th, it's pretty easy to just like put yourself on cruise control, forget to turn in stuff. If a college accepts you early and then your GPA goes from a 4.0 every other semester to a 2.0 your last semester of your senior year, that can create a problem. Colleges do have the power to say, you know what, never mind. All right. So don't let this happen. Don't let your grades fall apart, especially if you're taking AP classes and difficult courses. If you typically get 4s and 5s on your APs, and then your senior year, you get all 1s and your GPA falls to 1, you're going to have a really tough time holding on to any college acceptance. Okay. So just don't be in that situation. Does applying early, talked about this, it does raise your chances of getting accepted. They know you're going to apply if it's early decision. They know that you're really interested if you apply early action. It depends on the school. Some schools it's dramatically different, like I mentioned with Dartmouth and Vandy. Some schools it's marginal, but it's almost always an improvement. It's never lower. The data is a little confusing, so it's not that like you as an individual have that much higher of a rate of acceptance, but in general it is, because in my opinion, the kids applying early typically have spent a lot of time on their essays, their application looks very good, and they just have a higher chance of getting in at face value. But in general, yes, it does improve your chance of getting accepted. So before we dive into the regular questions, I want to give Ms. Cullen the answer to her question. So let me read it, because I didn't have a chance. Yeah, so that's a fine approach. So her question, for those of you who are not in the chat or might be watching this afterwards, is going to a school. She specifically said University of Memphis, but let's say any other school like this that you feel like you have a higher chance of getting into, to knock out your core requirements, and then transferring to your real school to study your specific areas of interest, like your actual major. Now, these are going to be general statements too. So if you have specific questions, please reach out to me offline, and I will definitely answer each and every one of those. But for some students, that's a great option. For some students starting out at Southwest or something like that is a really good opportunity for them to lower the financial impact that college might have, while also doing other things that might be necessary, whether that be working a job to make money to pay for a future more expensive college, or whether that be staying home to help out with whatever that looks like at home, or just trying to determine if that's actually a good fit. So if you're like, I have really no clue what I want to study, and my dream school is $50,000 a year, don't put yourself in a situation where you spend 6.5 years getting that 4-year degree because you keep changing your major over and over. One of the big issues and one of the big concerns that we had as Next Step coaches was trying to help kids understand what different career opportunities look like. And if you're not really sure, there's still plenty of time between now and the end of your freshman or the end of your sophomore year to learn about what a particular major might turn into. reach out to me. We will have those discussions. I like for kids to be able to go to their school that they want to choose if it's financially logical for them to do for all 4 years. But if you're still really uncertain, and if you feel like, this is another general statement, but if you feel like your level of maturity is not quite where it needs to be to do very well in college, living on your own, if you've never done laundry and cooked your own meals and that kind of thing, then staying close to home there's nothing wrong with that at all. And it can definitely have a huge impact on the cost and the amount of student loans. If you don't know, if you have an idea of what you want to study and you don't really know if that's what you're going to do, I strongly encourage trying to find people who do that now and who have that degree and asking them. And you'd be really surprised with how successful this is. But if you find somebody you want to potentially go be a veterinarian, and that takes years and years and years to do, if you email veterinarians and say, hey, I've got interest in this, but I really don't know what you guys do from a 9 to 5, which is the most common issue I see with students, is like they have this idea of something without really any clue what it looks like when they go to work. So I would encourage those students to contact somebody and go spend a few days, during their fall break or whatever they can do. You'd be surprised. Most businesses respond quickly and say yes. And if not, there's typically more than one person that does that job, or else you wouldn't be taking a college degree toward that. If that answers your question, Ms. Cullen, great. If not, feel free to follow up there in the chat or just reach out and take yourself off mute. Ms. Harper, is there a disadvantage to not submitting ACT? That is a $1 million question. Is there a disadvantage to withholding ACT scores at test optional schools? At face value on paper, no. They do not punish you. Julia, again, Miss Keys is going to send that out, so you can see that after once the call is over, we'll upload that for you. Miss Harper, going back to that though, they do not, at least purposely, have any kind of bias against people not submitting scores. I get that question more. That's probably the question I get more often from people than any other question, and the answer is, I think it's different school to school. It's really difficult to tell. If you can get a score that you're proud of, I always encourage people to do it, because it's another data point that you can provide. If the score that you have and you have worked to improve over and over has not changed, and it's something that is extremely different from the rest of your profile, like it doesn't align with your GPA, your class rank, or your AP scores, or anything else, then in those instances, test optional schools, in my opinion, probably will be okay with that. Is University of Memphis, Miss Davis, is University of Memphis test optional? They were last year. This year they are not. You can verify that because someone told me that they went back to test optional, and Miss Keys, you might be able to find that on Google search while I'm doing this, but I think they do require a score this year.
Yeah, I have that list in my office at work, and I don't have it on me right now. I'm sorry, Darissa, but I can check it tomorrow if you're unable to find it online.
We did a tour recently, and I just can't quite remember. I know they talked about that, and then they also talked about GPA. So, if somebody's ACT score isn't that great, but their GPA is higher, because like Luna's not a great test taker, but she can, get ahead better in her classes. Is that considered, or how does that work?
Good question. So I'm hesitant on University of Memphis because I'm pretty sure that they moved from, I'm positive they were test optional last year. Every single college and university in the contiguous US was test optional. I'm pretty sure that they require a test this year though. I'm looking it up now, and everything I'm finding is from last year, and it's like, we're test optional. Because if you type in test optional University of Memphis, that's what's going to pop up. But I don't think.
I have the recruiter's card, so I could ask him to, yeah, I can reach out to him as well. And
Yeah,
also, Luna has a 504. So if a student has a 504, do they take that into consideration with ACT scores and with GPAs, which her GPA has been pretty high. So I'm not so concerned with that, but.
Um, w- that's another school to school question. Like it depends on the school. With the 504, I believe that would have an impact on the testing accommodations. Ms. Keys, I don't know if you know that answer. That might be a better question for Ms. Bott, but that I believe that'll have an impact there. But in general, though, like the short answer would be that they consider all different aspects of a student's application. That's what they would tell you. I would definitely contact them about the test optional, because I know it was last year, they said it was a 1 year only policy. And then I believe that they kept that, but I am looking here that it says freshmen entering in the fall of 2022 may be test optional. So contact them about it. And in general, a good strategy is to contact the school if you have any questions. There's so much weird data, because Memphis said for sure, they said last year it was not going to be a continuation. They would be the only year they did test optional. But I heard that they, like a month ago, recently went back to test optional, but I'm not positive. I got that through a student. I'm not sure. So, but in general, they, you're talking about the 504 plan. I don't know how much of that each school sees, because it's school to school specific, and it would be your disclosure. That might be a better question for us to get back to you on as well.
Yeah,
they
that's
do
fine.
look
And
at,
I know they do the accommodations. Like if she were to go to school there, they definitely, give more time, and they
okay.
help out. They even have like people they'll pair you up with if you need help with getting notes and stuff like that. If you're not a great note taker, there were a lot of impressive things that I liked about that, because sometimes Lena is one of those students where she needs a little bit of side-by-side help from somebody. So
Yeah, well, if they do that, then I'm sure that they do take that into consideration. However, other than the military academies, schools, and Ms. Keith, correct me if I'm wrong here, but other than the military academies, colleges and universities are not allowed to see if you used any kind of a testing accommodation unless you choose to disclose it. Like, I think the only ones that are allowed to ask that are, unless you're requesting it on their particular campus, but like for your SAT and ACT and APs, only military academies are allowed to request that, I think. Yeah, okay. So Ms. Keys is shaking her head. I think she's saying I'm correct there. And the only reason I know the military academies are they do not allow any testing accommodation. So if that's what you're looking to do, reach out to me offline. But
Right.
yeah, did that answer your question, Ms. Davis?
Oh,
Yeah.
sorry.
Go ahead.
I wanted to interrupt to say that I found that University of Memphis is test optional for next fall, for the fall of 2022. I'm going to put a link in the chat for it. But they're calling it test flexible. So they have this new announcement that I just put in the chat as a link that explains kind of what that means, whether or not your GPA is factored in. But that can be a good resource for University of Memphis for this upcoming admission cycle in 2022. That I believe that it says that under the section that says, is this policy permanent? It says it's only will be in effect for first-time freshmen applying for the fall of 2022. We will assess the status of the policy to determine the strategy for future enrollees later this cycle. So it looks like for students who are applying to U of M for next fall for 2022, they are test flexible is what they're calling it. So there are some answers there to questions about, submitting standardized tests and, how that will impact the decision, at least for University of Memphis, because as Mark said, a lot of it is school to school. But I just wanted to offer that up just to make sure that you all had that resource for those of you who have students or seniors who are applying to U of M. So yeah, there you go. Are there any other questions that you all have that you want to add to the chat?
I have a question about the FAFSA. Can I ask that, even though we're talking about something else?
Yes.
So I could not get online at all on Friday. It was terrible. And then I was panicking all weekend because I was like, I have to get this done. They said, do it by the first, do it by the first. So anyway, we couldn't access it, but we did get on, I guess it was a day or two ago. And Luna had put some information in, and I did as well. And we did, what is the code that we have to share? What is that called? I can't
It's
remember.
the save key through your
Yeah,
FSA
the
ID.
safe key. Yeah. So I thought it was going to be where she had to fill out some information, and then I did, and we used that key so we didn't end up with two different applications, correct? Because that was the big worry. You're like, don't
Yes.
end up with two separate applications. We did the safe key and all that, but when I submitted my end of it, it sent everything through. So I'm just hoping that it wouldn't, I wouldn't have been able to submit it if we didn't both have everything we needed to completed, would I?
You might have been able to submit your portion. You know, she has to put in things like her colleges and everything. So that save key basically allows the parent or guardian and student to go in and do their own portion of the FAFSA. I do want to make sure that, just since we're recording this, the deadline is not October 1st. October 1st is when it opens. So if there's
no, I knew it wasn't the deadline.
Okay.
I just, yeah,
okay.
I knew that wasn't
just in
the
case
deadline.
if anyone's out there pulling their hair out right now, you do have time. You have quite a bit of time. The deadline is school contingent. The national deadline is June 30th, but your school is definitely not going to allow you until June 30th. So go look at your school's deadline. I don't believe you would be able to submit anything other than just your portion of the information. I would need to look at it to know exactly what you're talking about, but I'm assuming that you just uploaded like the parent expected financial contribution portion for general information, and then that'll go to that information will be sent to each school that Luna decides to apply to, and they will use that information to make their own determinations. But what you did was you supplied the Department of Education with general information that will in turn determine eligibility potentially for federal unsubsidized or subsidized student loans, depending on the difference in where you're at financially and where the schools that she decides to apply to are in terms of cost. But that can't be calculated until she puts in her portion.
Okay, cool.
The question that just popped up is a question that, so when you're talking about ACT scores, those ACT scores usually come out about 14 days after you sit for the test. You can plug in proactively to send those to colleges, or you can wait and retroactively pay. I think it's $13 a pop per school. The rest of those questions, though, are not within my ability to answer. So I'll leave that to Ms. Keys about GPA and report cards coming out.
Right. So that's a great question, Michelle. Our first quarter of school, I think my internet is going, okay, good, I'm back. Sorry, I thought I froze for a moment. Our first quarter of school, of this school year, actually ends this coming Friday, October 8th. So you will be able to look on either on PowerSchool, or you can request, actually, you know what, I think that they are emailed to you all by either Sasha Haynes, our guidance counselor, or by Adrian's advisor. You know, you'll receive those report cards, those from either one of them. And their grade point average is usually listed right at the very bottom of the report card. So you'll be able to see, you know, within the week, likely, you'll be able to see all of that information and access it. And Miss Haynes, Sasha Haynes, our school counselor, is also the person who sends transcripts 2 different colleges that our students are applying to. So, you know, you can always actually email her and request a transcript if you would need one sooner than, you know, within the week. But it wouldn't have the information for this first quarter of the year on it. It would be what's called like a preliminary transcript, as it would only have information from the last school year on it and information from the year before. But yeah, you'll be able to access all of that within the week. I see a question from Madeline Edwards, working on the FAFSA, and said the link with the IRS to populate those figures wasn't working. Huh.
Yeah,
Mark.
the data retrieval tool, it is faulty, to say the least, at times. It is also an extremely high volume time of the year, so I'd give it a couple days, try it again. But you make sure that you're using everything correctly. Like, make sure that there's no discrepancies when you plug in your personal information. And if it still is creating issues, and Ms. Davis did say that it was back up and running as of yesterday for you, Ms. Edwards. But if it's still creating issues for you, best thing you can do is just contact them, because it'll save you so much time to use that.
Yeah, I know that the seniors heard from me on Friday, October 1st, when the FAFSA opened. They heard from me to fill it out soon. But again, like Mark said, there's a really high volume. My hope is that you know, they would not wait until the very, you know, 11th hour to fill out the FAFSA. I want them to go ahead and fill it out in the next week or so, in the coming weeks, as soon as possible. So yeah, if you didn't get it filled out over the last weekend, it's okay. It sounds like it may be better to wait a couple of days, like Mark said.
Leah, has Stefan Parsons, the admissions counselor from U of M, been over to the school? Because we met him and he said he was the person to chat with, you know, from U of M for Crosstown students. Has he actually been on our campus yet?
You know, I was just pulling up my calendar to see if he is on the calendar to come and visit with our students. I've emailed back and forth with him quite a bit, because he's been really helpful for our students who applied at the beginning of September, when there was an application fee waiver. So I do have a relationship with him. Sasha Haynes has been helping different colleges schedule days to come and meet our students, particularly during lunchtime. And I am checking. I see lots and lots of schools on the calendar. I don't see him yet, but I'll reach out to him to make sure that we are on his list, because we would love to have him there. And again, it would be nice for me to meet him, having corresponded so much. So I'm glad that you mentioned that, because I see UT Martin and I see Christian Brothers and Lemoyne Owen and Rhodes College. I'll have to reach out to them, and MTSU as well. I'll get them on our schedule though. Thank you, Darissa.
I was just going to say one more thing, if that's okay.
Yeah.
For parents that are questioning U of M, like, originally that wouldn't have been necessarily a choice that I would have picked. Luna was wanting to go out of state, but she has, or not out of state, I'm sorry, out of town. But she's decided she wants to stay closer to home. And we did the one of their tour days over there. I think they have another one coming up in October. I don't know if it's passed already, but I was super impressed. And they have a bunch of new buildings where they've renovated, and they just are adding more stuff all the time. I was impressed with the campus, and being a native Memphian. I know that sounds terrible that I had, you know, my opinions before, but you know, I was really sold on, like, okay, if she does get accepted here and decide to go here, I think it will be a great fit and a great campus to be on. And they have lots of security and everything around the campus over there.
That's so great to hear, Darissa. And I have to share with you that
Hey,
Luna shared
Michelle.
that with me. Oh, hi. Hi, Michelle. Yeah. Do you have a question, Michelle?
Hello. Hey, yeah, yeah, I do. I've just myself, I've been looking around and Googling this, that, and the other college. And I keep seeing, and this, forgive me, this is kind of a specific question, but I keep seeing that MTSU is a hidden gem. That I've read that in a number of places, and I know they're supposed to be on campus on Thursday. Is that the kind of thing? Is that just for Adrian to attend, or is that a parent thing too?
Oh, that's a great question. Our hope is that our students will connect with the representatives from the school. Would it be okay with you if I check in with Sasha Haynes to see if that would work for you to meet with the representative as well at some point?
Well, yeah, that's fine. Or, we're perfectly happy just taking an overnight trip and go up there and see it ourselves.
Well, that I'm happy to also just check with her and make sure that there's time for you to get to chat as well. And I can email you tomorrow if that's okay.
That sounds wonderful. Thank you very much.
Yeah, absolutely. I have heard similar things about MTSU, especially like in the past 5 to 8 years, just about how much it's grown and what wonderful music production program they have there. So
I've
yeah,
just been
I'm
shocked
excited for them
at
to
what I've
come. Yeah.
been seeing about this. What I would have thought was just a nothing little but they look great.
Yeah, we're really excited to have them come and talk with some of our students. So and they've been doing rolling admissions there, and we have had quite a few students who have applied and
I'm
heard
sorry,
back that they
you were
were
breaking up there.
accepted.
They've been doing what?
Oh, I'm sorry. They're doing rolling admissions there. So we have had crosstown seniors who have applied there and have actually already heard back that they were accepted. And so we're excited to have them on campus so that some of our seniors can meet the representative. All right. Well, if y'all have more questions, you can always email them to mark@brainsandbrawnllc.com. I'll put that back in the chat as well. I appreciate you all being here tonight. And again, if you have questions, you can email them to Mark. Email is in the chat. Thanks again so much for coming tonight. And we will see you very soon. Bye, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Thanks, Mark.
Bye.
Bye.
Have a nice day.
Bye. Thank you.